Hello, aspirants. Welcome to PW OnlyIAS. I'm here preaching with a daily analysis of the Hindu from 17th of October 2024. Let's begin today's analysis. This is a QR code where you can find all that I've written on the board along with the other material that is required for your preparation. You can scan the QR code or type this particular name. You can get the access to this particular Telegram account. Okay, so what all topics we have taken for today's analysis? First, the topic that we have taken is the exit polls and the issue that has been raised by the Chief Election Commissioner. Along with it, the renewable energy hits 200 gigawatt in India. Now that is again a very important dimension which we're going to study. Then PMECRG and Maha EV. Now what are they? What are the features of them? And they are again important for your prelims and mains. We'll study them. Then a very important issue, Canada and China. The topic had come in the editorial itself. Along with it, various articles have been coming. So we have taken a brief of all those, talking about the relationships between India and Canada, why the issues have escalated, what are the concerns, and what should be done in future. Along with it, the news in shorts and the MCQs for your prelims practice. Let's begin with today's analysis. The first topic that we have taken for today's analysis is the exit polls. Now, we very well know why it is known as an exit poll. See, the dimension over here comes that, for example, a person has basically casted a vote. After voting, the people come out. There are people, let us say, the analysis agencies or the various agencies that are concerned with basically studying the trend or the patterns of how people vote. They basically gather data from the voters. Based on that, they create an analysis. And why is it exit? Because after the voting, when the people give their opinions to whom they might have voted, this is known as an exit poll. Now, please understand, the Chief Election Commissioner said the exit polls are creating a huge distortion by raising expectations that does not match the actual results. So before, like let us say 8:30, when the result has to be declared or starts, actually the counting starts, we realize that around 8 p.m. further details with respect to these agencies keep on coming out. Now people develop a certain set of expectation that this particular party or this particular candidate is going to win. But when the result go the other way around, then the people might start questioning the election process itself. Along with it, a wrong expectation is created in the minds of the people and also those who have been basically contesting the election. So this is a problematic situation which the CEC has basically pointed out. Please understand. First of all, let's see what is an exit poll. Exit poll is a post-voting survey. As I've told you, let us see this is a center where the voting is done. People have gone here, voted, and this is supposing the boundary of that particular area where the voting is going on. The people come out. You'll be having some people outside here who might be asking you, who have you voted? What do you think? Which candidate will win? And again, these are sample surveys which we do not know how many people are surveyed based on what analysis they do. So this is something very discreet also. So this is a post-poll survey. That means the voting has been done by those people and many people would be surveyed along with that. So what is generally happening over here? We see that post-poll survey conducted after the votes have been cast their votes, aiming to predict the outcome of elections by collecting the data on how the individual voted, right? So after the voting, you come out of the booth and you realize that certain people are standing outside and they ask you, who have you voted or who do you think is going to win? Certain people will say a person from party A will win. So supposing out of the votes, people, they have collected data from, let us say 100, 200 people from that booth. They might collect data from some other booth. And based on that, they're going to extrapolate it. That means that most of the people out of whom they have surveyed, they assume that yes, this party or this candidate is going to win. And based on these surveys, they basically give a data that this particular party has a greater tendency of winning. So these are the exit poll, because it is after voting you exit out of the booth and then you tell the person who are basically asking you regarding that. Now, what are the key issues that are highlighted by the CEC? Now see, first is a lack of transparency. Issue of the sample size, survey locations and methodology. Now I said, for example, how many booths you've taken for the analysis, you don't know. Actually, we as people do not know. how many people in each booth have you surveyed? That is also not correctly known. What is the methodology that you have adopted? That is also not correctly known. And what will you say that in case a person has voted for party A, but moving out says he or she has voted for party B? So the behavioral aspects are somewhat not trying to tell you which party he or she has voted for. Then what will you do? So these are a lot of problems with respect to the data that is being gathered. So there is lack of transparency. Next is pollster accountability missing. How? Those agencies which are basically conducting these exit poll, if the exit poll gets wrong or completely wrong for that matter, who is accountable for them? Or can some action be taken against them? No. But do you realize that because of their data collection and their research, or let us say their report being published in newspapers and along with the TV channels, along with the YouTube channels they might be having, it creates a lot of problem and expectations that, okay, this is an agency who has conducted this much data from talking to or interacting with so many people, but there is no accountability on their part. If they get wrong, they might say, oh, by mistake, the data, I think, went wrong, and this is what they assume. But it might create a lot of problems which we are seeing. Premature predictions. Premature prediction, unrealistic expectations. That means, based on the data that they have gathered, they might assume that this candidate is winning the election from that particular seat. And it is like something that the election is out. They assume that this candidate is winning, and that creates a wrong expectation in the minds of the candidate. And very often, as we saw in certain recent elections also, in the state of Haryana, that the exit polls showed some other data, but the result came something else. So what we realized that this issue, that is why comes into a lot of importance. Then is early trend manipulation. What happens? Supposingly, the counting starts at 8:30 a.m. and along with it, you realize that the exit polls have released their data and surveys. Now, what happens is that when the trends start going, trends, that means the initial data that is coming from the election commission itself, and let us say what are the, who is winning or what the trend is, when it is not matching, then a sense of manipulation arises in the mind of the people. That some manipulation is there. That is why these exit polls are creating a lot of problem in the minds of the people, because if you start questioning the election commission and the process of election, then that creates a lot of problem, because that is the major institution with respect to the integrity and democratic structure of India. And that is why the question is being raised. Next is self-regulation needed. The CEC basically said that CEC emphasized the role of self-regulatory bodies to improve the exit poll practice. They're not saying they're going to ban it. They say there has to be a proper mechanism and accountability with respect to these exit polls and agencies who are basically dealing with that. So these are certain concerns that were raised. Along with it, please remember, there are certain regulations that have been there for the exit polls even before the concern that was raised. First, the Election Commission guidelines. The media outlets must register with the Election Commission of India before conducting the exit polls. Whether it is the media bodies, whether it is the agencies that are basically conducting the these exit polls, they have to register it with the Election Commission of India. First. Second, Section 126A of the Representation of People Act 1951 prohibits the conduct and dissemination of exit polls results in any of the any form during the specified period. That means, supposingly the elections are taking place in various phases and various states are going to undergo certain elections. Do you realize that is why the results are declared? Let us say if many states are undergoing elections around the same period, the results are declared on one specific date only. Why? This is because that if certain election results of one state is declared, or for that matter, certain exit polls come out, that might impact the election results of other states. Similarly, if the exit polls, with respect to exit poll also, you just cannot have the data made public in the news or the newspapers or any form within this specified period that has been given by the Representation of People Act 1951. See that period. It prohibits. The prohibition lasts from the start of the polling of the first phase until the half hour after the poll closes in the last phase across all states. That means if 5 states are going on, election in 5 states are going on, let us assume. Now see, from the polling start, when the polling of the first phase in that first state, let us say the polling is starting, before that, that means you cannot basically even give any data till the time the half an hour of the last state. That means elections in all states, in all the phases are conducted. That means so there can be no impact on the citizens who are voting. So that means if all the cycles of election in various states have taken place, only after that, half an hour after the last phase in the all the states have been done, then only you can basically deal or talk about the exit poll. So these are certain regulations. That means if supposingly if the 5 states are undergoing elections, supposingly 2 states in which, let us say, elections have been done and 3 states are remaining. If the exit poll is released, let us say, assume after second state selection has been done, though the result will come later on for all the states. So what will happen? The exit poll supposingly shows that party A is winning with the majority. So what happens? That impacts the mindsets of the people who are in these states also. To prevent that mindset change or whatever manipulation that can come, the exit polls are going to be released only after the elections in all these states are done. This is again a restrictive way in order to have a proper democracy and prevent the people from getting impacted by certain results being shown, because those results itself can be fake or created by, let us say, various agencies who are basically conducting these polls. Let's move on to the next topic. India's renewable energy capacity hits 200 gigawatts milestone. Now, this is a huge achievement for India from various aspects. Please understand, the great thing is that renewable energy contribution to the total electricity generation is now 46.3%. Let us say it is going to come to close to 50%. That means 50% would be contributed by the renewable energy. Now, this is something that we used to think, let us say 30, 40 years back, that renewable energy, though it has so many issues, it will never be able to compete with the traditional, or let us say the conventional means of electricity generation. But we see here that it is now picking up. Now, let's see. The total electricity generation is in India is, according to the statistics of October 2024, 452.69 gigawatt. Out of this, the renewable energy contribution is 201.46 gigawatt. And this is again a big achievement. Let's see. The important thing is, because this chart that I presented in front of you can be asked directly or indirectly in your prelims examination, and also whenever a question of the renewable energy comes, giving certain stats and, let us say, figures is helpful. In prelims, what question can be asked? You know here that solar power is contributing 45.1%, hydro 23.3%, wind 23.5%, small hydro 2.5%, biogas close to 5.6%. Now, exact capacity you might know, but at least you know the percentage. So you can see in the prelims, I can ask you which among the following has the highest amount of contribution to the renewable energy, or they can ask you to even arrange them in order. That is why these are the things you should be knowing for prelims as well as mains. In mains, if a question of renewable energy is asked, you can, let us say, draw a pie chart or give a certain statistics. It becomes important. So this is the capacity in India with respect to the government of India that was released recently. Next, now there are certain government schemes. Why it becomes important is because reaching to the level of close to 46%, 46.3% is something that the government has pushed a lot because of the various schemes that have been there, and that has been major contributory why the renewable energy sector is moving at a very fast pace. See, let's see that. National Green Hydrogen Mission. So there are various programs. Among them, National Green Hydrogen Mission aims to produce 5 million tons of green hydrogen annually by 2030, promote development of green hydrogen production, storage and export. PM Kusum scheme. Please remember, all these schemes become important whenever the topic of renewable energy comes, and this can be asked in your prelims as well as mains. PM Kusum aims to install solar pumps and grid-connected solar power in rural areas, provide subsidies to farmers to install the solar irrigation pumps by the government. Now we have the PLI schemes for solar PV modules, offer incentives for manufacturing high-efficiency solar power modules, encourage domestic production. Waiver of interstate transmission system charges. waives transmission charges for solar and wind projects commissioned in by June 2025, and green hydrogen projects are exempted from the transmission charges till 2030. Ultra mega renewable energy parks, establishing large scale renewable energy parks to provide transmission of solar and wind energy, and it is basically a means of attracting investment even from the various companies from abroad. National repowering and life extension policy, focus on repowering older wind energy projects to enhance their efficiency. Strategy for establishment of offshore wind projects, aims to set up 37 gigawatts of offshore wind energy by 2030. So these are certain schemes which have been there, basically pushing the renewable energy sector, and a lot of, let us say, scope is still there, and we can meet our targets that we have for 2030. Obviously, we'll be seeing that. Now again comes a question that comes in your paper also, that with respect to which states have been basically contributing the largest amount with respect to the renewable energy. Please understand, according to the government report, in the renewable energy capacity installation, Rajasthan, Gujarat, Tamil Nadu and Karnataka are the states which are leading. First being Rajasthan at 29.98, close to 30 gigawatt. Gujarat 29.52, very close to Rajasthan. Tamil Nadu 23.70 gigawatt and Karnataka 22.37 gigawatt. So again, in the examination, they can be smart enough, UPSC can be smart enough, instead of mentioning simply Rajasthan, it can give 3 states, Gujarat, Tamil Nadu and Karnataka, right? Now they can ask you, let us say, which among the following has a second largest installed capacity? They can ask you this also. Let us say if 4 are also given. These things should be little known in order. Let us say Rajasthan, Gujarat, Tamil Nadu and Karnataka. If you do not know the exact value, at least the order should be known, right? Next. Significance of this achievement. How these achievements are very significant from the dimension. Please understand. Sustainable development goals, the goals that we have, which we are expected for the countries at global level to achieve by 2030. Among them, goal number 7 basically aims at ensure access to affordable, reliable, sustainable and modern energy for all by 2030. So it is our commitment towards sustainable development goals as we are moving towards the renewable energy. So it is fulfilling the sustainable development goal number 7. Now, India's energy targets, we very well know that live with an ambitious target of 500 gigawatt of installed capacity from non-fossil fuels by 2030. So we are on a right track towards achieving this target. Again, there is still a lot of scope. We have to a little bit pick up the pace, but this ambitious target itself is pushing us to achieve that particular target, which is to be achieved by 2030. That has been given by the Government of India. Next is energy security and diversity. We all know that oil is, the topic of oil is very problematic in nowadays. Why? Because we know that in Middle Eastern region, a lot of conflicts and warlike situations are going on. We know that the prices will increase. We know that a dependence is there. So along with it, we realize that diversification of the electricity production becomes very important. Along with it, we know that we are moving towards vehicles based on EV. That is why we realize that from the traditional means to going towards a modern means of energy, let us say generation, electricity generation, becomes very important. So we are diversifying those sources, not depending upon the traditional sources. Along with it, we have already said that India is aiming to be a developed nation by 2047. In that, okay, means of electricity generation through coal remains important, but with the time, as we see renewable energy sector increasing, we realize that dependence on that will slowly decrease. So this is again a means of energy security and diversification of the energy. Okay, next topic we are saying is the topic that we have talked about, PMECRG and Maha EV. If you would remember, a few days back, I took up the act, which was the Anusandhan National Research Foundation Act, in which we were talking about the governing council and how it is going to work. I discussed about the act also. We know that it came into force in February 2024 with the aim of strengthening research and innovation in the country, increase R&D spending and encourage private sector participation towards the research and development in the country. Now, with respect to this particular organization, National Research Foundation, it has recently announced 2 of its initiatives. Under this, first of its 2 initiatives that have been announced. Now, please see to it. First is the Prime Minister Early Career Research Grant, Second is mission for the advancement in high impact areas electric vehicle, which is known as Maha EV. These two again become important for your prelims as well as your mains. Now, what these two are, let us see. Have a look over here. ANRF, Initiative Prime Minister Early Career Research Grant. What is it? It basically empowers and supports the early career researchers in their pursuit of research excellence, providing them with an enabling environment to effectively conduct research with ease and flexibility. This is something very important. Earlier, what used to happen, there used to be constraint of money, there used to be constraint of the environment. Various red tapeism used to be there. So that is why the atmosphere of research was lacking in India. So in order to resolve that particular issue, the government of India has basically come up with the Prime Minister Early Career Research, where the early career researchers want to go into, let us say, a lot of research, where they would be provided with the funding and the environment and all the necessary requirements that are for them in order to create an atmosphere of research and development in India. Now, we all see that early research, pursuit of research, we are basically providing them with an enabling environment to effectively conduct their research with ease and flexibility. Now, see, there is certain eligibility also. Applicant holding a PhD, MD, MS, MDS, MVSc degree and working in some recognized institutions. Age limit is 42 years with 3 years relaxation for SC, ST, OBC and differently abled. Please remember, this is only one-time relaxation. It is mentioned by the Government of India. Only a one-time relaxation. After that, it will be for everybody the same age. Applicant is eligible to apply within 2 years of joining the institution. The grant amount is rupees 60 lakhs plus overhead for 3 years, a maximum of 700 grants per year. Now, this is again very helpful, where approximately, let us say, 20 lakhs is in a way giving per year, plus a lot of all the excessive expenditure with respect to your research and development projects will be given. That will also be given along with that. Along with that, 700 grants per year is something that is there with a maximum. This is again pushing us towards the initiative that is research and development, and a very positive initiative from that side of the Government of India. Now, see over here, what is the impact? It aims to position India as a global leader in science and technology. That means, because if the research and development component is lacking, then definitely you will lag behind in the research and development sector. Research, development, science, technology sector, there are going to be issues. So research and development forms the core of your science and technology. So what are the key focus? Encourage the young leaders or researchers. Now, see, young people, again, a lot of ideas, innovation, they want to do a lot of stuff. You realize that startups coming up in India are led by very young leaders. In the early 30s and 40s also, they have built mammoth companies. That is why the government is focusing on to tap on with those early researchers who can create an impact with their research and development. So expand the knowledge boundaries, because earlier what was happening, because of lack of funding, lack of environment, flexibility, the people who had these constraints were not able to use their knowledge with respect to research and development. But this now provides an environment to them to expand the knowledge boundaries through new knowledge creation by the research and development. Next is goal of a vibrant, research-driven, groundbreaking discoveries. Obviously, if we'll be seeing that as so many grants will be made, as we have said, maximum of 700 with 60 lakhs plus the all other overhead charges for the 3 years. We will be seeing that with time, newer researchers will be coming up. Along with it, it becomes important that if the new researchers are coming up, they should be practically applicable also. Merely a theoretical aspect of a knowledge, good for, let us say, if your theory, but along with it, if it is not practically viable, then its economic benefit reaping takes a backseat. Now, that is also something that one needs to be careful about, right? And those are the parameters which would also be considered when the grants, when the people for those grants are basically selected, right? So that is very important. Next is Maha EV. first mission for the advancement in the high impact areas. That is mission for advancement in the high impact areas, Maha EV mission, right? So what is Maha EV mission? Please see here. What are the objectives? Enhance domestic research and development capacities on the electric vehicles components to achieve strategic advantage in the EVs for self-reliance and global competitiveness. Do you realize the important thing? Enhance domestic R&D capabilities. You realize today also we depend upon large number of components that are imported from other countries, especially China. If a lot of research and development is there, if let us say alternative technologies are found, if better, let us say batteries are found, then why not? Now, for example, I'll give you an example, right? Tata has basically tied up with ISRO. Now, you know that ISRO is a master class with respect to technology and R&D. Now, Tata in future will be using, let us say, collaborating with ISRO for their battery technology, and there will be innovation with respect to the battery technology in the Tata company is in collaboration with ISRO. Such types of R&D, such types of collaborations are going to help overall with the Atmanirbhar Bharat's concept being basically reaping benefits. Right now, we realize most of the companies tend to import those technologies, and the battery quality that we talk in India is not as per the expectation that are with respect to companies like Tesla. That is what the concern lies. Now, let us see what we are talking about. So, enhance the research domestic R&D capacity, because we want to be self-reliant. Why it is strategic? Strategic means because if certain countries, let us say China, stop the exports from their country with respect to the technologies and the minerals that are required for the production of batteries and let us say chips, for the electronic chips, for the electric vehicles and for the other cars, what will happen? It will impact the economy of India. That is why domestic R&D is very important. Along with it, position India as a hub of development of EV components. Now, please understand the technology verticals for establishment of e-nodes. Now, what please understand? What are these? Tropical EV batteries and battery cells, power electronics, machines and drives, PEMD, electric vehicle charging infrastructures. These are the basic things which are going to worked on as verticals under which the research and development will take place. Like tropical EV batteries. Why tropical EV? Please remember, the major countries which basically manufacture them are, let us say, in let's say temperate regions. Now, when those batteries technology come to India and they're placed in Indian cars where the temperature is already very high, we realize that recently various companies of two-wheelers which are manufacturing two-wheeler, let us say scooters, started, let us say, exploding. Why? Because the batteries are not suitable for India. They were imported from the other countries, which is suitable for the temperate climate, not for the tropical climate. So, research and development in the tropical batteries and battery cells, power electronics, machines and drives, and electric vehicle charging infrastructure, how effective, cost-friendly the infrastructure can be created, and a better, let us say, quality being provided, and quicker charging mechanisms. General condition, applicants must hold a regular academically research position in recognized academic institutions, laboratory and other R&D institutions. Participants of relevant industry PSU startups is mandatory. Now, these are certain things which we basically see. What are the mission goals? Please understand. Supports Atmanirbhar Bharat, encourages collaboration across institutions, establish India as a global hub for EV components. And these are the mission goals. Now, these are something that you should be aware of. Why? Because these can be again asked in your prelims and your mains. They can ask you, let us say, in order to drive India towards the mission of electric vehicle self-reliance, Maha EV mission can play a very important role. Now, please understand, in that case, you should know about what is the aspect of this particular scheme, where we are, what are the positives, what are the challenges, and then possibly you can answer those questions. So, knowing these schemes for mains also becomes very, very important. If not directly asked, possibly if some renewable energy question is also asked, over there also you can name the scheme and get additional marks, because in your, remember, in your mains examination, mentioning the government schemes, certain statistics are given by the governments, becomes like a brownie points which give you or fetches you marks. So that is something one needs to be very careful about. Okay, let's move it. Now, this is something that has been in the news for quite some time, and many people wanted that this topic in a way or two should be discussed. Now, you realize that in today's newspaper, 3 articles have been there. with respect to India and Canada. First is Canadian frostbite. This is in the editorial section. Next, we have Five Eyes support Canada in the spat with India on Niger. Then then Trudeau basically says that did not want to blow up Canadian-Indian ties. So do you realize this? The Prime Minister of Canada talking about this. So we realize that rather than taking all of them individually, let us combine them. This is again an editorial plus the various analytical aspects that we need to see. And Indian-Canadian relations with respect to economy, strategic and all, and how this spat basically that has happened is going to impact the relations. Let us see what should be the way forward also. Let's begin. Now you'll be seeing the Indian and Canadian relations recently, why it has been more into news is we realized that recently India ordered the expulsion of the 6 Canadian diplomats. That means the Canadian diplomats, 6 Canadian diplomats which were in the Canadian embassy in India, they were told to leave India with immediate effect. Along with it, announced the withdrawal of the High Commissioner to Canada to return to India. Now, this is something very tragic also, that this generally happens when the diplomatic relations are at its lowest. Now, this is actually reflecting the lowest state between the Indian and Canadian international relations between them are at its low, very low rather. What is the issue and the dimensions associated with that? Let's see that. See, the recent events and the diplomatic tension that has basically created this problem or this strain in the relationships. First is Niger skilling. What happened is, please understand, there's a person named Hardeep Singh Nijjar in Canada. There was a person named Hardeep Singh Nijjar in Canada. Now, please understand, he was a member of the Seek for Justice group. Now, that group is a pro-Khalistani group, which wants that a Khalistan, a state or country of separate Khalistan, should be created in India. Now, what happens? This particular person got killed in Canada. Now, the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, informed the Parliament on September 18, 2023, of credible allegations. This is a word that was used by the Prime Minister. Credible allegations that Indian government was involved in the killing of Hardeep Singh Nijjar. And this is basically what, again, he was a Canadian citizen and a pro-Khalistani activist. Now, this was the point which, though the existence of certain Khalistani groups and raising an anti-India propaganda in Canada was already something that India was not liking, because it goes against the spirit of India and that disturbs the domestic situation also. But that was already going on. But when this particular issue rose, this was a problem from the Canada side, because they said our citizen has been killed by the agencies of some other country. But for India, it is also a very problematic situation, that how can another country blame India for the killing of some particular person in Canada? Why India refuted? Please, India directly refuted that we have got nothing to do with these allegations. It is your domestic affair that has happened and we are not involved in that. The reason behind it is, please understand, these allegations hurt India also. Why? Because this will be seen as, from an international perspective, that India is intervening in the affairs of some other state. First. Second, that would impact the domestic situations with respect to the diaspora Indian diaspora being present there. Third, now India as a global player doesn't want to hurt its image by these domestic petty politics that are being placed by the Prime Minister of Canada. Now, if you wanted to talk about these topics, it is something that could be interactive with, let us say, the National Security Advisor or the, let us say, the Home Minister with respect to India, the Prime Minister. Going to the Parliament and declaring that and targeting a specific country with respect to certain event has been taking place is something that was seen as very unprofessional and not something that is expected from the head of a country. And that also putting allegations on a country. That is why these reasons basically led to deterioration of the relationships between India and Canada. Now, Other things happens. This further escalated into political tensions. Why? At the various conferences that the Canadian ministers and government officials are having, in every platform, they started blaming India and the Indian government for killing of the citizens of Canada. One of them, like Niger. Now, this is a escalation at all platforms and especially at a selective targeting of the Union of India. Now, this along with what the Canadian Prime Minister had done. But after that, using every platform across the world in which, let us say, multilateral countries or multiple nations are interacting, over there blaming India is something that was out of the sight of what India's and Canadian relations stood for. Next, what happened? Diplomatic fallout. Now, what Canada did, please understand. Canada asked India to lift the diplomatic immunity of 6 Indian diplomats. You very well know, when you have the diplomats posted in some other country, you have diplomatic immunity. Remember, even if certain criminal offense is committed by a diplomat due to some reason, that particular country cannot arrest a foreign diplomat. He can be sent to his country and then, let us say, the investigation can, or whatever things have to be done, can be talked about. But the country where a diplomat is posted, let us say an Indian diplomat, or let us assume that a Pakistani high commissioner in India or Pakistani diplomat is in India, if they commit some crime also, you can not directly arrest them because they have diplomatic immunity, right? So what happened? Canada wanted that India removes the diplomatic immunity of those diplomats. What will that happen? Then Canada's intentions were to charge them criminally and possibly arrest them and investigate them with respect to the Niger killings. And this India said, again, you are intruding with respect to the policy making and the affairs of India without having any credible evidence. So that what resulted in? Immediately, India denied and recalled its diplomats and expelled the 6 Canadian diplomats. Now, this is the reason. See, this is the immediate reason why we saw the expulsion taking place. This is the main thing. We know that Khalistani activities, pro-Khalistani activities are going on that had already strained the relationships between India. Then we have the Niger killing issue that the Prime Minister raised along with its ministers. Then we see the political escalations at various platforms that Canada was raising and again tarnishing the international image of India. Then we realize that diplomatic fallout where Canada basically says that remove the diplomatic immunity of the Indian diplomats. Now, this is something very unprofessional on the part of Canada for asking this thing because they know that there are international norms and regulations under which the diplomatic immunity is there. So, with this basically brought the relationships between India and Canada at its lowest, where India had to take action by expulsion of the Canadian, let us say, the diplomats, along with it calling its High Commissioner from Canada again to India. Now, see, we have seen what the issue is, right? Now, let us see what are the relationships, what are the types of relationship that India and Canada have had with respect to various fields, economic and, let us say, trade relations and all, because we realize something that when we talk about the diplomatic relations going down, we realize in a long term, other relationships are also impacted. Though right now, we realize that trade relations have not been impacted. No sanctions from the side of India has been imposed on Canada. But we realize that there is a possibility of these relationships being impacted. So let us see the relationships that are there. We know that let us see the Canadian investment in India. We realize that Canada or Canadian companies have invested greater than $75 billion in Indian economy, and there are 600 plus Canadian companies that are in India. Now, that means Canada should also understand that you have so many companies working in India and so much opportunity with respect to businesses being provided by India. This is something that Canada should understand, and we as investment relations, we also know this. Now, missed trade deal. You realize that a free trade agreement negotiations are going on between Canada and India. Now, because of this diplomatic spat, we realize that has been stalled. So the free trade agreement negotiations that were going on between India and Canada have been stalled because of this diplomatic issue that has basically come up between India and Canada. Next is the nuclear cooperation. Now we see signed in 2010 and a joint committee on the civil nuclear cooperation was instituted. So we already have a nuclear cooperation agreement with Canada. Now, this could have even taken forward, but we realize that today these diplomatic relations and Canada being, we see from the perception that it is supporting in various forms an anti-Indian agenda is hurting the sentiments of Indians and India as from the perspective of its unity and integrity. So we cannot, it becomes difficult in a long term to cooperate with Canada. We see trade relations, we see India was Canada's 10th largest trade partner. India exports on an average 4.10 billion worth goods on products to Canada. On the other hand, import by India is close to worth 4.05 billion. We are cooperating with respect to space also. ISRO and CSA, that is Canadian Space Agency, have been cooperating with respect to the various projects. Canadian satellites have been launched by ISRO. With respect to diaspora and remittances, we realize that one of the largest diasporas, greater than 16 lakh people of the Indian origin, are in Canada, which is close to little more than the 3% of the total population of Canada, right? Second, many people say the remittances are large, but if you realize, yes, the remittances amount is large, but if you see the total percentage, it is not that large. Canada contributes 0.6% of the total remittances inward that is coming to India, only 0.6%. Now, the question arises, what needs to be done? See, we have seen what the issue is. We realize that what the fallout has been, why certain instances happened. We realize that what are the relationships that are there. Now, we realize that all these relationships in a way or two would be dented, right? Trade relations, economic relations, strategic relations would also be dented, because I'll tell you the concept of the 5 I's that is here. Based on that also, these relations are going to be dented. But what is the way forward? Please understand, we as Indians, along with, we have to see that India's interest is number one. So if Canada wants to maintain cordial relationships and come to those good terms as it had been in the previous years, then something that the first important thing that it has to do is this. For India, it's important that Canadian government should address the anti-Indian or any Khalistani propaganda that is prevalent in Canada. Why? Again, see, the concept of Khalistan being promoted at a large scale in Canada basically goes against the Article 1 of the Constitution of India, which is basically the Union of India we're talking about, where every state, the 32,87,263 kilometers square of India, is an integral part of India. Secessionist movement or seceding of any territory is something that goes against the concept of India and India's constitution. The activities taking place in those regions are basically promoting these concepts in India by developing a sense of animosity. That is why if Canada expects India to have cordial relations in matters of every dimension, then this is something that needs to deal with. They should come at table first to talk about what this issue and how this issue can be resolved, and then possibly other things will come in line. That is the first and the number one topic. Next, along with this, it is important that back channel talks should continue, right? We have seen the National Security Advisor visiting various countries, secretly also for that matter, so that black channel talks continue. So this is something that should continue, so that those issues that are not even in public domain should be addressed. Next, engaging with the Western allies and explain them the concerns. Now, this has become very important. Please understand, explaining the Western allies, why there is strategic problem has arisen because of this spat. Please understand, there is a concept of 5 I's. 5 I's is basically an alliance of 5 countries: Australia, Canada, New Zealand, US, and UK. They are representing the Western world, Western countries. Now, why I have said engaging with the Western allies, the reason behind it is that Firstly, understand what Five Eyes are. Five Eyes are those alliances where they cooperate intelligence network information with each other and what all electronic communications are taking place in various countries at various level, even at the level of citizens. That means it is an intelligence network sharing among all these countries. Now, what happened is Australia, obviously Canada, US, and even UK mentioned that there's a possibility, high possibility of India being involved in Niger's killing. So no evidence was given. They said, now what happens is this creates a diplomatic problem and strategic problem for India. On one hand, we realize that United States, Australia are members of the Quad with India, having good relationships with India. On the other hand, we realize that their tilt has been towards their Western ally, that is Canada, not India. That is why it is important for India also to get them into confidence and tell them that India has got nothing to do with it. And along with it, in fact, Canada has been a breeding ground for activities that are basically going against the unity and integrity of India. That is why this taking the Western allies into confidence becomes important. Along with it, unity, integrity, and security of India remains non-negotiable. Straining relationship with another country is not a problem for us, provided unity of integrity is not hurt. We see the case of Pakistan. Did you realize that we, as a country, saw that they were not resolving the issue of terrorism? If you want to discuss topics, first solve your issue. If India is not interacting with them or talking to them, we realize that it is better for us right now because they are not ready to solve the issue of terrorism, which goes against the integrity. So possibly if Canada basically follows the same thing, it will have a similar treatment that will be meted from the Indian government side. Because if this concept is hurt, then other things will not come in line, first of all. So they have to resolve the domestic aspects. We realize that at the level of Canada also, the governments want to remain in power where the diaspora plays a very important role for their election and voting. So that basically being perceived as a means in order to lure the vote point politics in Canada, the government officers and the politicians have been using a Khalistani means as to push them or support them also. Now that basically goes against the interest of India. If that is not resolved, then obviously the relations will further go to a state where then there will be no coming back. So that is why these things have to be dealt with. And again, all these 4 points, 1, 2, 3, and 4 are the main dimensions. We have covered this topic from a holistic perspective. As the new things and new information keep on coming, we'll be adding them to the prevalent topic. Let's move ahead. News in shots. Okay. So this is again the topic of Macazilla. This is something very interesting. We saw that SpaceX has achieved a significant milestone in this exploration by landing a Starship rocket using an innovative structure called Macazilla. See, before we even see that, just see this photograph. This rocket comes here, here, and gets attached. You realize that this is not a reverse photograph. It is actually landing, not just moving in space. It is basically landing and returning to this particular position. So this is basically Macazilla, because this basically will help you in again reuse, saving a lot of money with respect to the space program. So what is it? Macazilla is a nickname for the SpaceX 400 feet tall rocket catching structure. So what is this? This is a rocket catching structure, right? In Texas, the two massive mechanical arms. So what are the two arms? One arm, two arms. So these are the two arms called chopsticks, designed to catch the super heavy booster mid-air at its returns to Earth. Aims at revolutionizing rocket recovery by making more efficient and reusable. Because we realize that large amount of cost is done, because if the rockets are not reusable again, then again massive amount of money spent. If they are caught back in a proper state, they can be reused after certain modifications. That saves a lot of money basically for the companies like, let us say, the SpaceX. So this is again something news in shots. Now MCQs. So there are not 5 MCQs. Today we have 7 MCQs for your practice. Let's have a look at that. Pause the screen, attempt the question. 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 Okay, so there is just a minute. 6 and Now, just a minute. This is 7. So please pause the screen and attempt the question. We have all the answers over here. This was the daily analysis of the Hindu from our site from 17th of October 2024. Hope you liked it, learned a lot of new things, and possibly help you. This will help you in analyzing dimensions from prelims and the mains perspective. Take care, and we'll meet tomorrow. As you always say at the end, Jai Hind.